unfortunately, I brought the slides, and I think the idea what we proposed that I would just give an overview, try to make it in less than half an hour, so that we can then have Q&A, and the purpose could be that you want to inform yourself or your own vegan nutrition to make sure that you're a good example of a vegan for those who you're trying to communicate with and show that it's healthy and possible, but also that you may have arguments because people might ask you as you're doing your vegan outreach, right? So however that information is useful for you being vegan or helping other people become vegan, I hope it can be of your advantage. The advantages of adopting a vegan diet is from the health point of view. Of course, the greatest benefit is on ethics, right? Is that you're not collaborating with animal exploitation, and I think that's what's most important, but we're going to be talking specifically about nutrition here. So from that point of view, the main advantage is especially the prevention of chronic and degenerative diseases, which means cancer, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, obesity, and some forms of cancer, especially of the reproductive and the digestive systems. It will give you a better quality of life and also a greater longevity. So studies show that vegetarians, that includes ovo-lacto vegetarians, lacto vegetarians, and vegans, and a lot of the studies are targeted at ovo-lacto vegetarians, will show that these populations have, not only they live longer, but they live with a better quality of life. So they get older with less crippling diseases. And the potential disadvantages, which we can take care of, is that there are some potential nutritional deficiencies, but mostly it's a matter of adapting the routine, that the person is adapted to one specific food taste, and that might take a while to change, or the restaurants they are used to go to, or the food they are used to prepare at home. That's actually the main challenge, and not really the nutritional deficiencies. But those can be looked into and taken care of. I hope to cover some of that. And the reason for those advantages is because it's low in fat, especially in saturated fat. It is also lower in sodium, because sodium is embedded into animal foods. It is high in fiber, it's high in natural antioxidants and other protective substances like fibers I have mentioned, and vitamins and minerals. So these are the correct, whatever food policies that we look at, if the government after year or decade after decade is saying eat more of these, eat less of that, what they actually should be saying, and we hope that in time there will be a ground that is acceptable enough for people where they can simply recommend that you should go vegan. Because if you look at the recommendations, it's always towards eat more fiber, eat more fresh foods, eat more foods that are low in fat, or avoid the foods that are high in fat. That's already common sense, right? Which translates into a vegan diet. If they were to say just one thing, but you cannot say as a food policy like a government food policy, you can't just say that because the population is not. There will be too many barriers to that, right? And when you look at the vegetarian or the vegan population, they have a much lower body mass index. Their ratio of bad to good cholesterol is also a more advanced one, that has more advantage, and they will live longer. Now let's get to the nutritional concerns, so we have enough time for Q&A. So these are the main questions that are raised. All of you who are vegetarians or vegans have been asked at some point in your life, where do you get your protein from? Even those of you who have been vegans for just one day, you've probably been asked that already this far. So protein, and then iron, calcium. Zinc is not usually something that is asked, but something that we should also pay attention to. But all of these, as we will see, are usually not a real issue. It will be an issue if you are being very careless. But B12 and omega-3 can be a true issue if you don't take care of it. So let's start with protein. The reason why protein is not really a problem is because most vegetable foods will have enough protein. They will have a good ratio of protein to the amount of food that you're eating. So if we look at it as calories, if you're eating enough calories, you're likely getting enough protein, unless your calories are coming from isolated fat or isolated sugar, or sugar that has been added to foods. So that means you're getting more calories, but you're getting it from a single ingredient, or a food that is not whole, that is not natural, or from alcohol, for example. But if you're getting enough calories eating your vegetables and fruits and roots and legumes and cereals, the average amount of protein on those foods is more than the minimum that we need. So usually a person who will have protein deficiency is a person who's also just eating too little. They have either little access to food, or they have some condition where they just don't feel like eating or don't have access to that. Otherwise, if you're not eating just the junk food and you are looking at like whole foods, foods that are in their whole state, you are likely getting enough protein. This chart here, let me try and explain. Usually when you look at a food label, it will show you how much protein there is in that food in grams. Right? So it has 3 grams, 7 grams, 10 grams of protein. It will also tell you how many calories there are in that same portion or package of food. So if we translate that into percentage of protein per calories, and you can do that with any label, right? Each gram of protein is 4 calories. So you multiply whatever is there. If it says 10 grams of protein, that means 40 calories. And if it has 400 calories, so you just divide, and you will find that it has 10% of the calories in the form of protein, which is the last column here. It says the amount of calories coming from protein. It's usually not on the label, but you can easily do that math. Just multiply the protein by 4 and divide it by the total amount of calories. I'm not saying you have to do that exercise. It's already been done here. And the point is, what we need is 10%. If you're eating enough calories and the average of those calories are coming from, 10% of those are coming from proteins, then you're good, because that's how much you need. So as you can see, all the vegetable foods, they're in Portuguese, sorry, but that says broccoli, alfalfa sprouts, tofu, lentils, cauliflower, cucumber, chickpeas, beans, wheat, corn, barley, almonds, forgot that one, potato, carrots, brown rice, banana, and an apple. So as long as it's not a fruit, it could be a cereal, a legume, a root, all of them have more than 10% of their proteins coming from calories. So you cannot go wrong. And you can include the fruits, because it's going to be in the mix. But if you're eating a strictly fruit diet, then you might have problems with protein. That's why fruitarians, people who only eat fruits, will also eat nuts, so that they can balance that, because nuts will be higher in protein, more concentrated in proteins. So you're not really going to do that. But if someone were to eat all their calories from carrots, which is this column here, they would be getting 10% of protein. That's just an example, right? Because then, first, you're not going to be able to eat 2,000 calories from carrots. That's too many carrots. It won't fit in your stomach. And also, you'll only be getting some amino acids, not all the amino acids you need. But even if you were to go lower on the vegetables, you would still be getting enough proteins, as long as you're eating enough calories, as long as you're not losing weight, and those calories are not coming from empty foods like alcohol or sugar, or most of them. Some of them could come from that. Okay, that looks complicated, but the message is simple. You can't go wrong as long as you're eating enough calories. But then there's the matter of quality. So that only answers the question of, is there enough protein in the vegan diet? Yes, there is. But How about the quality of that protein? If we look at a protein as a block, the bricks that make up this block, or the different ingredients that make that block, are the amino acids. So the amino acids are bound together to form a protein. So the different combination of amino acids will form different proteins. Could be a hormone, could be an enzyme, could be a protein that is building your muscles. So some of those are called essential. That means they have to come from the diet. Whenever you hear that an essential amino acid, that means your body cannot synthesize it. You have to eat it. And different animals will have different essential amino acids. So cats, either it's a lion or a house cat, they have one essential amino acid which is not essential for us. Okay, they need to get that from the meat. But we can produce that because we're not carnivores, we are omnivores by nature. So, and dogs will have the same amino acid needs that we have. So they can be vegan. Right? The same amino acids that are essential to dogs are the ones that are essential to humans. But then felines are different because they are by nature carnivores, so they cannot synthesize some of the amino acids that are in meat, which is not our case. And where would we get that from? We cannot get it from a single food. It is true to say that one single vegetable food does not contain all the amino acids in balance. Meat does, or egg white, they will have all these amino acids in balance. But that doesn't mean that we need them. We can make that balance from our own mix, right? Just because you cannot find all the amino acids in balance on a single vegetable food doesn't mean you cannot live on a vegetable diet, because you're not going to be eating a single vegetable food. You're going to be eating a mix of that. So, for example, the one amino acid, which is called lysine, is less present in cereals, which is corn, rice, forget the word, sorry, barley, the cereal family, wheat. They will have less of the amino acid called lysine. On the other hand, the legumes, which is beans, chickpeas, peas, they will have more of that amino acid lysine. And they will have less of the methionine, which is more abundant on the cereals. So that combination of the cereals and the legumes will give a good balance, because one has more of one thing and the other has more of that, has less of that same one thing. So, and the nuts and the seeds are also a good source of protein. So it is, most of the amount of protein is in nuts and seeds and in the legumes. The cereals come to play to complement that amino acid that is missing in the legumes. Right? So the greatest amount will come from nuts, seeds, and the legume family, and they will be complemented by the cereals. So variety is the key. You always want to have variety. Doesn't mean it has to be one different legume or one different cereal every day of the week. You could stick with two kinds, one kind of cereal and one kind of legume 4 days a week. And then on the other 3 days, you have 2 different ones. But there has to be some kind of variation. And with the season or from month to month, if you buy your legumes for a month to make it at home, buy a different one for the next month. And if you're eating out, make sure you get during the week, making an option of different legumes. Yeah, so for those who might not understand what I meant by legumes, because of the language, so that's what I mean. It's beans, lentils, peas, chickpeas, soy and soy products, fava beans, all of those that come, what's the word in English? Fava? Huh? Say again? Road beans, right? It's green and has the small beans inside. Okay, so if you think about the botanics here, all of these will come in a row bean fashion, and it has small beans inside. So those are. Huh? Okay, never mind. So, but they all have the same characteristic, which is you open that and they're inside there. The cereals, on the other hand, They look like, if you think about a wheat plant or a corn, the seeds are on the outside, right? So the cereals will have the seeds on the outside, and it's usually a grass, and the beans are inside a protective case, because you might have other legumes or pulses in your region, which I didn't mention. And the nuts and the seeds, of course, are those that have a higher fat content. And you can tell, like, if you smash a bean or a chickpea on a piece of paper, a raw one, it's not gonna stain the paper. But if you do that with a nut, you're gonna get oil there. So then you know it's a nut or a seed. So for proteins, make sure you're eating enough calories, and those calories are not coming from empty foods. And by that I don't mean you should do an accounting or math of the calories that you're eating. That's not really the focus. But if your weight is not going up, or especially if it's not going down, that means, and you're eating whole foods, that means you can't go wrong with the protein. Yeah. So let's talk about calcium. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A in a few minutes, okay? So calcium, you can see it's the same sources that I put in green here. It's legumes and pulses, and the nuts and the seeds are also rich in calcium, not only protein, but also calcium. And the calcium can be complemented by the dark green leafy vegetables, the fruits or dried fruits as well. You will not lose calcium from that fruit because it's been dried, as you would with some vitamins. And of course, fortified foods. You might be getting a soy milk which was fortified with calcium, or orange juice that was fortified with calcium. And we will see, so I'm just going to say this right now, that the iron sources are the same. So protein, beans, and nuts, which also have calcium, complemented by dark green leafy vegetables and fruits. The iron sources are the same as the calcium sources. And then people are going to say that because you're vegan, you're not getting enough calcium because they think it's synonymous to milk, right? People think calcium is something liquid and white and comes out from a cow uber. It's not, right? It could have different colors and different textures in foods. And in fact, vegetables will give you other factors that are more positive towards your bone density, because the issue, or the most commonly discussed issue with calcium, is your bone health. And your bones will have a high content of calcium, but it does not depend only on calcium. So to make sure the calcium was deposited in your bones. There are other factors, and those factors are present in the vegetable foods. And the factors that work against that bone health are present in animal products. So, for example, potassium is good for your bone health. It will give you a good calcium balance. That means you're going to retain more calcium than you would expel in your urine, for example. So foods that are rich in potassium are a good combination with calcium if you're thinking about your bone health. And those are exactly the fruits and the vegetables. The animal products will not have a good potassium ratio. Vitamin K is also present in vegetables. The vitamin D, it is present in animal products, but we can produce our own vitamin D if we're getting enough sunshine. In Nordic countries, it might be a bit harder, even in this region, especially during the winter. So the body can accumulate vitamin D during the summer if you get more sun exposure to make sure you can get by during winter, but you can also get a vitamin D supplement. Make sure it's the vitamin D2, number 2. The vitamin D3 is usually from animal sources. There is now, for the last 2 years, there's been a vegan vitamin D3. So unless it states clearly that it's vegan, you know that the D3 will be from animal sources. And the vitamin D2 is from a vegetable source. The vegetables are also low in sodium and low in phosphorus. Phosphorus and sodium are intrinsic to animal foods, animal products. So whenever you're having animal products, you might be getting your calcium, but you're also getting these factors which work against your good bone health. And animal products are moderate in protein. They might not be exaggerated in protein, but doesn't mean they're deficient in protein. They have just enough protein. And too much protein is also bad for your bone health. You will make calcium leak from your bones because protein are made from amino acids, which is an acid substance. So it makes your blood more acid. And your blood has to be at a pH of 7.4 all the time. So the body will trigger some mechanisms to make sure that your blood pH is on that level. And if you eat an exaggerated amount of amino acids, of protein, then the body will take the calcium, which is the opposite to acid. It is a base or an alkaline substance, to balance that. But that calcium will not go back to your bones. It will go out on your urine, or it will be deposited in your kidneys or your joints. So too much protein is also bad for calcium. And like I said, the iron sources are the same as the calcium sources. If you have a history of low iron, you might want to make sure you're eating enough vitamin C along with your meal. When I mentioned the cereal-legume combination, it does not necessarily need to be on the same meal. It might be a good idea because then you're making sure, but it's not that they both will bond or react or something, right? You can have one amino acid at one time, the other amino acids at another time. But when it comes to iron and vitamin C interaction, it has to be on the same meal because they will actually chemically react, which is not always synonymous to orange juice. Okay, vitamin C is present in fresh foods. So you might be eating other fruits or other raw, fresh vegetables that already have the vitamin C in there. If the vegetable is looking fresh, it is very likely high in vitamin C. When the vitamin C is gone from that vegetable, that's when, when you look at a tomato and it looks dead, or a lettuce, it's like, doesn't look fresh, doesn't look lively. It's already, it might as well the next day be molding. That means the vitamin C is gone, because the vitamin C is like the suicidal element there that reacts with the oxygen. So it keeps it fresh. It still looks fresh because the light and the oxygen are not affecting that tissue, because the vitamin C is sacrificing. And when you take that tomato from the plant, the vitamin C is still there until it gets to a point where it's not, and then the tissue will start to suffer. That's when it doesn't look alive anymore or healthier or shiny. So most fresh fruits and vegetables will have vitamin C. So make sure you're not just eating stuff from a can, even if you're eating the iron sources, that you have fresh fruits or vegetables along with that. And also for those of you who are lacto-vegetarians or who may think that you have issues with iron in the past, but now you're vegans and you were lacto-vegetarians before, you should know that the main problem, more than making sure you're eating vitamin C along with those foods or that you're eating the iron sources, is the milk in the diet. Because dairy products not only are very poor in iron, they're virtually zero in iron, but also they will make it more difficult for you to absorb the iron that might have been present at another food that you had on the same meal. So they do not contribute, but they also will make it harder for you to absorb the iron that might be present on the same plate. So moving away from dairy is one good strategy if you want to take care of your iron. And many people who will stop eating meat and then they're going to go through a transition with dairy products included in their diet. And then they might feel that they need more animal products because, I just stopped eating meat. I need to emphasize other animal products like eggs and milk. And then they're going to have even more problems with iron because they stopped eating a good source of iron, which was meat. And they emphasize a bad source of iron, which is milk. So the best thing is, if you just go vegan, then you're gonna have better iron sources, because whatever space that milk, that cheese was occupying on your diet, if it's not there, you're gonna eat something else, which is vegetables, and those vegetables are gonna be more rich in iron than the dairy products. Make sense? Okay. Okay, good. I think we will actually have half an hour. Let's talk about omega-3 and B12, and then we'll open for questions. Omega-3, this is usually overlooked. Or maybe I should also talk about selenium. It's not an issue selenium and iodine. And iodine, it's not an issue in Brazil, but I know it might be an issue for vegans in Europe. Iodine is present in vegetables as long as they were grown near the ocean, or in areas near the ocean. So if you look at vegan supplements here, they usually have iodine and selenium, because you have a large production area which is way far from the oceans. But you might be getting foods that are coming from oceanic regions, or from inside the ocean, like kelp or other seaweed. So make sure you get seaweed in your diet on a weekly basis here in Europe, because that will get some iodine in your diet. And when it comes to selenium is not a problem for those eating animal products, but it might be a problem for vegans. And the best source of selenium is Brazil nuts. I'm not selling them, but Brazil nuts are a good source of selenium. They're much richer than any other vegetable sources. So in your nut mix that you're going to be eating during the week, make sure there is at least throughout the week 7 Brazil nuts, or 1 per day. Doesn't mean every day you have to eat 1. It could be that you're eating 7 on Sunday, or just make sure there are Brazil nuts present in any form, whether it's a Brazil nut milk or the whole thing, or on your granola. Just make sure you have Brazil nuts present, because it's the one that will have more selenium than any other vegetable food. And selenium is very important for your immune system. You cannot stay away from it. It is essential. Okay, omega-3. This is usually overlooked because, again, omega-3 is present in some animal products, like fish that come from cold waters, which is the case in your region, and especially in the more Nordic countries. But vegetables will also have omega-3, but not all vegetables will have a good amount or a ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So hemp seeds, or anything made from hemp, are good sources. Walnuts, chia seeds, not sure how to pronounce it, and of course flaxseed. Flaxseed will usually be the cheapest one. I believe it is the same here. So the easiest strategy is to make sure you have 2 teaspoons, so the small one, of flaxseed oil every day. Right? Just make that a habit. If it cannot be every day, it can be broken into 2 or 3 times a week. So you could have 4 teaspoons every other day if it doesn't fit like your daily routine. Just make sure you can average that during the week. The reason for that is because not only we need enough omega-3, but we need a good ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. Omega-6 is also something that we want to have in our diet. It's also good for us. But too much of one means that the other is in disadvantage, because they compete on the same metabolic routes. So most of the oils that we eat, whether it's corn oil or corn and cottonseed oil, or sunflower oil, they are very high in omega-6. So a lot of the foods that we're eating, whether because it was prepared at a restaurant using those oils or because it's a packaged food, already have too much of those that are high in omega-6. So then at home we can choose the oils that are best for us, which is hemp, flax, walnut, and chia. If you're not going to be cooking, doing any cooking or food preparing, you can just take it as a supplement. Okay, it should always be cold. You're not going to really cook with it, but you could add it to your soup after it's already been cooked, or you could add it to some spread you're going to eat, like a tofu spread that you're going to put on your bread. Anything really doesn't really need to go into the fire. If you're just going to smash some tofu and put some spice in it, adds 2 teaspoons of flaxseed oil to that after you heat it, or if you don't heat it at all. Just make sure it doesn't go to the oven or stovetop. And if you are going to cook with something, then the canola oil is one that has a high ratio of omega-3. Okay. So another one that can be easily adjusted with a simple strategy. Okay, vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is not found on plant foods, right? So this is the one vitamin that is not present in any plant foods. You might find some claims for chlorella or spirulina or even some soy sauce brands that will say that it has natural vitamin B12. It was not added to the food, but it has it. And if you write those companies and ask for the scientific basis for that statement, they will send you a study from the 70s that shows that it has B12, or some study that was not confirmed at another study. That's because way back we couldn't differentiate the real B12 from the analog B12. The analog is something that looks like the vitamin B12 but doesn't do what it does, and some tests could confuse one for the other or not differentiate. And some tests that are new, they found like a batch of alfalfa sprouts that have B12, but then you take another batch and you won't have. So it was just contaminated with vitamin B12. Doesn't mean that every batch of alfalfa sprouts will have it. It's not particular to alfalfa sprouts. It was just one batch that was contaminated and ended up testing like that. Or could it be the analog that was in that food, and then if you really put it to a test in humans, like take vitamin B12 deficient humans and supplement them with that food, or make sure they're eating that food that has B12 on a test tube, but it won't make any difference in their clinical status. So that means it was an inactive B12. So every now and then there's this new food, some vegetable protein-rich leaf from Africa, and I mentioned that because that's one of the issues that one producer in Brazil is claiming right now, that it does have B12, and he showed me the study on a test tube, but it was never confirmed as in administering it to humans. And that has happened, like every year there's a claim from one food, and if they test it, it always turns out negative on its efficiency. So we should not try and be stubborn with that. We can just supplement the vitamin B12. It's easy. It's going to cost you 10 or 20 euro per year at the most. So it's cheap. And it's not exactly unnatural. Just because it looks like a supplement, it's not any less natural than this microphone or this chair and other things that we are willing to use in our daily life. It also, most importantly, it does not mean that the vegan diet is not viable. Because if I'm taking a supplement, it's like making a statement saying that the vegan diet is not natural to my species, right? If I want to eat like that, but that depends on a supplement, it might be interpreted as this diet is not natural to my species. That's not how I was built. But that's not the problem. The problem is that we're no longer natural to our environment. The reason that we need to supplement B12 is because B12 is produced by bacteria, and we do not eat as much bacteria as we used to when on a natural setting, right? We shower, we brush our teeth, we make sure our food is clean. We don't pick fleas from our partners and eat them like other primates will do. So there are primates living in the wild or even if they're living in a zoo, they are eating bacteria because of their hygiene habits or the habits that they've been forced into in that environment. So they won't eat it. But we, primates that decided to build cities and have everything cleaned up, we need to have vitamin B12. So it is not a statement against how viable a vegan diet is. It is just something that comes with civilization. Right? We don't want to eat animal products. We shouldn't eat animal products, and we want to live away from the wild, because these animals, if they're eating from the pasture or from the food that was not clean as the food that we wish, like the cows and the chickens, and they're eating food that have bacteria, so they will digest that bacteria. It will be in their meat, and then humans will eat that meat. So that's how they're getting their B12. So we don't want to be part of that cycle. But we also do not go back into living in the woods, so we have to compromise and take the supplement. Okay. How much? So usually, if your status is normal, you can take just twice a week. Doesn't have to be a daily thing. 1,000 micrograms of B12 per twice a week is enough if you have a good status. If you're already low in B12, then you need to be evaluated. If you're too low, you might need an injection just to bring it up, and then maintain it with the supplement. Or if it's not that low, you might need just like a daily supplement or a higher dose. Then you need an individual evaluation for that. But if you just became a vegan, or you've been vegan for 2 or 3 years, have no symptoms, start that before you have symptoms. So you don't need to get to the point where you need an injection or any higher doses. Usually symptoms will start after 3 years of being vegan and not eating any fortified foods, so foods that have B12 added to it. Okay, that's like a review of everything. Yeah, it has the email and the phone, which works for WhatsApp if you want to communicate. And the website, it's all in Portuguese, but you have my email there, which is either the VEDAS or the NutriVeg email will work. So let's open for Q&A so we can look at your specific questions. Thanks. Thank you.
So thank you so much for this exhaustive presentation.
Was it as exhaustive? Like you're tired? No, I know that's not what you meant.
Okay. I didn't mean it like
that. In Portuguese, it would have been that. Okay.
No, I meant that it included the most important questions.
Thanks.
But so I have 3 questions, and you can decide how many of them you want to respond to. My first question would be whether you get omnivores as clients, and how do you deal with that? Mm-hmm. The second question is, what's your view on caffeine? And the third question is, I meet this question very often, and I have a view, but I just wanted to run it with you. What do you think? So normally they advise 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day, and I understand that because we don't consume milk products, we need less. But I just wanted to make sure that you think the same, or what's your intake on that? Thanks.
Okay. Do I take omnivore clients? I take omnivore clients that are willing to become vegetarians or vegans. My practice is focused on consulting with vegetarian patients or those in transition. So whenever they come to my office, they already know that. That's how it's on the website. That's how people that will forward them, indicate to other people, already know that I work with vegan nutrition. So it doesn't happen like someone, I just have some disease condition or I want to lose weight and, I didn't know you were vegan. No, so but I don't usually deal with that conflict. I've been doing this since I graduated, so that was like almost 17 or 18 years ago. So people who come to me already know that. 1,000 milligrams of calcium, yes. As I showed, when you eat more vegetables and you're not eating animal products, you have more of the other factors that will protect your bone health and less of the factors that will be detrimental to your bone health. So it is very likely that we would need less calcium. You cannot state that scientifically. That's a hypothesis. So to come up with a recommendation or a policy that vegans can eat less calcium, would be responsible, but that theory, that hypothesis makes sense. So it would need more testing and more studies, and people being on a vegan diet for longer, for more years, should be able to make that statement and change that recommendation. But it is likely that because we have more of the protective factors and less of the detrimental factors, that we would need less calcium. The other question was caffeine, like in coffee. Well, you don't need caffeine, just as you don't need alcohol or other things, but it's things that people will take. So there's not a minimal daily caffeine need, right? But so as much less as you can have, the better. But if you find use in caffeine right now, the problem is that it will decrease your iron, not the caffeine, just the caffeine, but the whole coffee thing will decrease your iron and calcium absorption. So if you are going to have it, make sure or prefer to have it away from your iron and calcium rich meal or foods. So if you're really focusing on that, on one meal, because that has more nuts or fresh fruits, and you can get the coffee away from that meal, like not be in the same batch in your stomach, it's better because it will actually react with that. So that's from the nutritional point of view, that's it. Try and get it away from the good iron and calcium sources. Doesn't mean it's going to be null, like you're not getting any iron from whatever you ate, but you will decrease the absorption. So you would need more iron throughout the day if you are mixing with this. You always have it for dessert or something. But it could also be one more reason for you to stay away from coffee if you just need a motivation, then that's another one. Okay.
With respect to omega-3, what's about olive oil? And with respect to B12, what's about nutritional yeast?
Olive oil doesn't have omega-3 or omega-6.
It's neutral.
It's omega-9, which is the monounsaturated fat. So it's another class of fat. You could have it saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated. 3 and 6 are the polyunsaturated ones. And so olive oil is the monounsaturated. So you also want to get olive oil, but it does not compete with the others, with either the 3 or the... You only compete like, because I like olive oil so much that there's no space in my plate for flaxseed. Then that would be a competition, but not a reaction between them. And I need to take my B12. What was the other questions? Because memory loss is a symptom of B12
I do take tablets, but I heard that you can also eat nutritional yeast, and it's a natural source, apparently.
Yeah, there are some brands of nutritional yeast that have B12 added, like the Red Star brand. That one has B12 because it was added to it. But if you just take regular nutritional yeast or brewer's yeast, it will not have the B12. It will have other of the B complex vitamins, but not the B12. Okay, so yeah, some will add it, but it does, the yeast itself will not produce the same B12 that the specific bacteria will produce. Okay.
We have time for one more short question.
Thank you. Do vegan women who are pre-pregnant, pregnant, or lactating, do they have to change their diet?
Pre-pregnant, pregnant, and lactating need to make sure they're getting enough B12 and folic acid to start with, because B12 and folic acid are especially important during the first 3 months of pregnancy. So you want to start your pregnancy with a good B12 and folic acid status, because it won't help much if you're deficient and you start taking it after the 3rd month of pregnancy. It could have serious impact on the baby. But that's a recommendation that you hear for omnivores as well, right? But if you're a vegan, you want to pay even more attention to that. And during lactation as well. So the B12 will be present in mother's milk as long as the mother's B12 status is good. So you want to make sure you're getting that. And And even if your status is good, the B12 that goes into the milk is not the B12 that you have stored. It has to be a new coming B12. So you want to always get the B12, even if you're doing okay with, if your status is okay. And also because then your status, you're requiring more from your body, and you will end up depleted after that. And when it comes to all others, the amount of protein you're eating, the calcium, you just have to be more careful. Because as an adult, if you have a deficiency, say you have an iron deficiency, you might lose your job because you're forgetting everything, or you're getting late because you're too lazy to wake up in the morning because you're feeling tired. But then, you get your iron back and you're good as new, not at the same job, but your body is the same after that. But when it comes to a fetus, a baby, or a child, it will have impacts that will affect them the rest of their life. So they're going to either lose, they're going to be shorter than they should be because they didn't grow up, their height did not increase during those 6 months, and they really lost those centimeters forever. Or if it's a developing fetus, it could have impact on their nervous system. So you shouldn't be doing tests when it comes to a child, whether it's in your womb or breastfeeding or growing up. Shouldn't take risks with that. But it's the same issues. The flaxseed, the omega-3, is also very important during the first 3 months of pregnancy, just like the folic acid and the B12 and all the other nutrients. But just be super sure that you're getting that. And the same recommendation would go to an omnivore. It's not like because you're vegan, then you would be risking anything more than that. But sometimes if you're a new vegan, like you haven't adapted your routine or your taste to that means you're eating less foods for that period of transition. So if you're transitioning, then you want to be make sure that you get even more careful to make sure you're getting that during that period, because you cannot afford to not do so well during pregnancy or breastfeeding.
Yeah, we run out of time. Thank you, George, for your talk, and have a nice day.